Welcome to another Sales Hacker webinar. My name is Scott Barker, Head of Partnerships at Sales Hacker. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have an awesome topic for you today, and we're going to take the next 45 minutes or so to dive into why the world's leading CMOs are doubling down on events to generate pipeline. As sales and marketing professionals, we live and die by our pipeline a lot of the time. So excited to dive into it. And I've got an amazing guest to talk through this with me today. But before I introduce my guest, a few really quick housekeeping items. So number one, this is for the community. So we want you to get involved. Please jump on the Q&A. Let us know your name, your title, which company you're from, and any relevant questions. This will be a Q&A style, so we'll be going back and forth a little bit. So we are happy to hear from you, and we want to hear from you. So please jump on the Q&A. And then lastly, these are recorded. So if you have to jump on, you got to run into a meeting or you got to go close a deal, whatever it is, don't worry. We will be sending this to you as we wrap up. So you'll get an email from us at the end. All right, now that is out of the way, I want to introduce my guest. I'm joined by Alon Alroy, the co-founder and CMO at Bizzabo. Alon, welcome.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It's truly a pleasure.
Awesome. Yeah, we're very lucky to have you. And as always, I do like to just provide a little bit more context, a little more color into your background and Bizzabo. So Alon Alroy is the co-founder and the CMO of Bizzabo. And Bizzabo is actually one of the fastest growing event technology companies on the planet. Bizzabo's event success software helps leading brands like HubSpot, Gainsight, Outreach, Insight Squared, Electronic Arts, so really large companies, and really helps them maximize their business outcomes from conferences and events. I know Sales Hacker, we've used Bizzabo, now Outreach is using Bizzabo, so it's a cool company, and we're excited to have you. So we got that out of the way. Let's dive right into it. We have the next, like I said, roughly 45 minutes. So I want to spend as much time as I can picking your brain, because you're the event guy. You're really on the cutting edge of what people are doing in the conference and event space to drive a healthy ROI. So it sounds to me, just setting the stage, I'm very plugged into events. Sales Hacker, we do so many events, and it seems like they're everywhere these days. Everywhere you look, people are kind of fighting for your attention for these events. I think I get invited to an event every week these days, and that anyone is running a conference. Is that really the case, or is that just the perception? And if it is the case, why do you think so?
I think that's a great point, and I think your feeling is not wrong. It's not just a perception. The number of events is actually increasing year over year, and I expect that to keep increasing. And there are many reasons for it. We recently surveyed over 1,000 marketers and all kinds of business leaders, and discovered that most respondents consider live events to be the most critical marketing channel in their as it affects business outcomes. And I think there are many reasons for that. Some of them is that digital is becoming very cluttered and very competitive, and as a result, it's just more expensive than ever to grab attentions of your buyers, compared to an event where you have a captive audience.
Right.
Relationships, mainly among millennials, are becoming very flat. Some people call it the swipe generation. So if you really want to create a relationship, there isn't any other better medium than face-to-face and the power of in-person.
Mm-hmm.
Again, there are 8,000 events taking place a day around the world, and that number is expected to increase as CMOs are beginning to understand that if you want to really make an impact and be in front of your prospects or customers, there's nothing like the power of in-person. So I'm very excited about the time that we're at, and that in-person is back.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I think there was this shift towards events were big, and then everyone got obsessed with digital. All these new channels, social, started opening up, and people doubled down on that. And then, like you said, all these new, call them distribution channels, whatever you want to call them, they're so cluttered, right? Everyone is fighting for your attention. We all get, 80 to 200 emails a day. People vying for attention, and when you can actually sit down one-on-one, be in a room, there's really nothing that can replace that. And yeah, I'm drawn to all things that you said there. Like I used to be in charge of all the sponsorships at Sales Hacker. We used to run Revenue Summit, big conference in San Francisco. We had Sales Hacker London. We did executive retreats. And now I'm, helping with the big Unleash conference that we have coming up in March. And I can certainly say, even in, the last few years, event budgets are increasing year over year. And there's this new kind of, people are reinvigorated by events a little bit. People are paying more attention. I can see this firsthand because they're spending more of their dollars, and that's usually a good indicator that people are paying attention. Okay, so you spoke on some of these larger regions that companies are focusing on events, but why are events so powerful? What is getting people's attention, and how is that becoming such a powerful channel?
So in-person really creates an experience that provides businesses with a chance to create a relationship that really goes beyond digital. Right. It can lead to moments and memories that just last longer than a retargeting ad, that even if it has a very carefully written copy. And right. I'm running those retargeting ads as well. So, but at the end of the day, I think this is really the time of the rise of moment marketing in a way, in which marketers are constantly struggling to create those memorable memories. And I think there is nothing like, again, a captive audience and this sense of community that is being developed at an event. I think, Unleash by Outreach is a good example. I think HubSpot has created this movement, and inbound was the peak of it. We see companies like, from Drift to Gainsight, that they're all leading, creating large communities. And I think those events are the big enabler for those communities.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, and it seems like a lot of the, sorry to cut you off there, it seems like a lot of like the category leaders seem to own these events, right? And it's their opportunity to bring their digital community or their customers and all together. Yeah.
Yeah, because when you think about it, the events are very unique. They are, when you're at an event, what happens there? People are being inspired. People meet their next maybe business partner. People learn about new things. And if you run an event, you're already being perceived as some sort of a thought leader. Mm-hmm. So just in terms of brand awareness, there's a lot of power when you run a user conference or any type of an event. And I'm sure most brands these days, competitive market, are looking to get that perception. And CMOs just get that. According to this Forrester research that the entire industry is now consuming and quoting, the average B2B CMO budget is invested, 24% of it is invested at events. That's the largest single marketing channel, more than content and PR, ads. So that's very, very meaningful. Usually it's split in half. 20% of those 24 are being spent on hosted events, and 12%, is being invested on sponsored events. So exciting times.
Yeah, that's interesting, and that's a big chunk of budgets, especially with some of these larger organizations. So you mentioned something there that I want to dive into because I would love to just add it's something new that I haven't heard before. This idea of moment marketing. What do you mean by that?
I mean that people's attention span is obviously becoming very, very limited.
Right.
Everyone is quoting that it's starting to be one of a goldfish in a way, and therefore you know, everything is becoming shorter, right? People today, it's very difficult to expect someone to read the full article. So now it's getting into a 5-second Instagram story. But when you're at an event, again, it's an opportunity to disconnect a little bit from all of those different distractions and really live the moment. And
Mm-hmm.
that medium actually enables that in the most impactful way out of all of the other tools that a marketer today has to offer. And this is a trend that at least we're seeing, and we are in touch with thousands of events around the world, and that trend of moment marketing is really evolving during those events.
Yeah. Cool. That's awesome, and I would strongly agree. It's I even find myself when I'm scrolling through LinkedIn, I see a video, I'll maybe watch 15 seconds unless you catch my attention with something impactful very quickly. So it's definitely interesting. So okay, so we've set the stage. You know, Forrester saying 24% of the average B2B CMO budget's vested in events. You know, people are clearly paying attention. What has changed? What have you seen, and why are businesses actually doubling down on these events now?
I think there are a few reasons for that. One is that obviously the rise of event technology.
Right.
Bizzabo is obviously part of that movement, and I think now it's just it's finally possible to measure your event success and the business outcomes they generate.
Right.
Before that, most event marketers, it was a brand play. It was very difficult to really come back to the business table and to the other stakeholders and to say that your event was successful. It was more about a gut feeling, or that we made a lot of noise. There were many reporters attending, and event technology now enables those marketers to come back to the table and really demonstrate the impact that their events are making. The impact on pipeline generated, on the development of the pipeline, on the impact on retention, and that was not possible before. You're able for the first time not only to measure event KPIs, but the impact of those event KPIs on the bottom line, and that's huge. I think that still 80% of the market is still not there, by the way. That's why some of the brands we mentioned before, Outreach and all of the tech platforms that we are very grateful to partner with, these are the early adopters who are able to now scale their event programs because they see the huge impact on the revenue and on retention. There's a huge opportunity there. And that's also the reason, by the way, that almost $2 billion have been invested in event technology in the last couple of years. Because and that is being driven by marketing leaders who are adopting these tools because of that impact they now see they can make.
Right.
Lastly, I also think that the rise of account-based marketing is helping that, as specifically in the tech industry and in SaaS platforms, as companies go up market, they need to adopt new ways to be in front of decision makers. We talked about the retargeting ad. It's to grab the attention of a VP or a CMO through an ad. So more and more marketers and sales organizations understand that in order to be in front of their business buyers, they need to actually be in front of them at an event in person. So events fit perfectly well in ABM strategy, whether you're talking about a small VIP dinner or a business at a conference. So this is the second one, the rise of the ABM. And to talk about event technology, we talked about ABM, we talked about the fact that the market is just extremely hot these days with a lot of investment going into event technology. And there's just power to, again, demonstrate the success to business stakeholders, the ability to prove ROI and so on. We see that at that survey that we did, we saw that those who use event technology are able to demonstrate the ROI, and that was a huge improvement over the last survey that we did, in which we still saw we didn't see the same numbers that we saw this year in terms of the adoption of those tools to be able to prove ROI.
Yeah, mentioned a ton of great points there, and I think one of the keys there is that attribution, right? Like with the rise of the revenue focused marketer, right? Like marketing, even a few years ago was much more creative, brand awareness, make a lot of noise, and now it's we need to tie direct ROI to every activity that we do, and event technology is massive because you can see not only here's what directly came from the dinner we did in Boston, but also who did we influence? Was there deals in the pipeline and stuff that we actually touched and pushed along as well. I think that's super important. And then the ABM piece, super important as well.
Yep.
I think that would be cool to dive into that a little bit more here quickly for the community. I know account-based marketing, account-based sales is such a hot topic right now. How do you think about ABM when it comes to implementing it as part of your event strategy? Like how do you look at that when Bizzabo is doing an event, and let's say some of your target accounts are going to be there? What are the things that you're doing to set that up, maybe beforehand, like pre, during, and post?
I think in general, the touch point at an event is one of the most meaningful touch points when you look at an overall ABM strategy. This is in the examples that we see, once we have that in-person interaction at an event, usually it's the most impactful touch point throughout the ABM journey. We think that usually the in-person touch point should be pretty advanced at that journey and not the beginning of that journey. So once you design your ABM strategy, we definitely recommend to start with a more softer approach, whether it's in emails and content and so on. And once your target accounts are a little bit more mature, then the impact of an interaction at an event is the most rewarding one and the one that is demonstrating the most ROI. Again, not everyone, obviously, we're not expecting everyone to be able to host a conference. We do understand that events can be expensive. It can take a lot of time, but I think that power in person that we're talking about can also happen at a small dinner, at a small meetup. And it's becoming easier and more affordable than ever to actually open your office doors and host a small event for industry leaders and so on.
Yep.
Although it sounds like a strategy that can potentially not be a scalable one, but I think the results are almost always there. Again, the results and the relationships that are being built and now can be measured as well.
Yeah, I would agree there. And something that I'm noticing as well that's kind of in line with that, and I'd be curious to hear your viewpoint on this as well, is I'm seeing CMOs, VPs of marketing really doubling down. Like the big conferences are awesome. Of course, they have a place, but a lot of people I'm finding are doubling down on quality. So the qualities of attendees that are going to be there that fit right within their, account-based strategy. And I'm seeing this shift a little bit towards quality over quantity. It used to be I just need, to get as many leads as possible, and we'll put them in a sequence, and, away we go. Are you seeing that trend at all, or does it vary?
We honestly see a rise of events of all types. So we see more and more of those user conferences, but we definitely see more of those small field marketing events as well. Those are the hosted dinners, the VIP industry gatherings, because I think in the past, the big events always had the resources to measure their success, even if it was manually using a spreadsheet. And now you're able to really scale an events program and measure them. So it's becoming easier to actually replicate, create a playbook, and do more of those. We can see that Gainsit, for example, has their Pulse user conference, but they have many small Pulse events leading up to that event. And I know for a fact that they can measure the success of those, and which enables them to scale that program. And many of our customers do it as well. And I think, again, if we get back to the ABM approach, usually the small events are very impactful in getting the attention of your target accounts.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah,
I'll use the opportunity maybe to give another example.
Please.
Let's say we have an account that we're trying to work on, and we mapped the functions of that account. You have a VP of marketing that we are trying to sell to, and you have maybe 3 functional users, and you have a director. We may reach out to the VP and invite them to a dinner in New York City, and we would reach out to the functional users with inviting them to a webinar or something that's a little bit less costly. And we see that is working very, very well for us. So this is just an example of an ABM campaign that one of the touch points with the more senior leadership is an in-person one.
Got it. That makes sense. So almost combining your digital, I guess that is ABM, but combining your digital touch points with events and kind of tiering them out a little bit for level of importance of the prospect. That's cool. I like it. Okay, so you mentioned one there. You say Gainsit Pulse. So Gainsit is obviously killing it at events. If I'm a marketer, sales professional that goes to a lot of events, who should I be looking at out in the market? What are some, most notable organizations that are hosting conferences? Who in your mind is doing it really well?
Obviously, you have all of the big ones, which cannot be ignored. But I think it only demonstrates the power of events. So when Apple, we'll start with that because that's the most known example. When Apple wants to launch a product, they're doing it in an offline event. Obviously, today everything is very hybrid, and people from around the world can tune in. But they're doing it in a real-time event that has thousands of people attending, including, by the way, when Alibaba is launching their big Singles Day shopping day, they're actually launching that at an event. Google I/O and Microsoft Ignite and Facebook Developer Conference, all of those are usually the peak of those organizations' marketing activities. Getting back more to maybe SaaS, so obviously HubSpot's Inbound, I think, is an amazing example for a movement that was built. We saw the growth of that event year over year. I think it's something that is just inspiring. And I have no doubt that the impact that Inbound is making on HubSpot's bottom line is very, very meaningful. And not for nothing, they're investing millions of dollars in running that every year. And I think, by the way, most of the SaaS industry these days are incorporating the user conferences as part of their strategy, again, from Outreach and Gainsight and Sisense and Moz and Drift. Almost every successful SaaS company is running a user conference. And we see that correlation, by the way, in that survey we did, we see a very direct correlation between successful companies and those who are running events. we see that business leaders believe that events are actually contributing to their bottom line.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. And there's more than just, getting in front of your ideal customer profile at events, right? There's this, you motivate employees, you recruit, you attract better talent. There's all these other benefits of throwing these events other than just, closing business or staying in front of your current clients. And quickly just go into the community here. We got a comment from David Delaney, shouting out 10bound as one of the leading conferences. I went to 10bound this year, David. It was awesome. So if you're in sales, check it out. I would agree. All right. So
yeah.
The other thing I wanted to talk about is, where are these events headed? Like, what's the next evolution we're going to see? You've got your finger on the pulse. You see so many new events. Anything that's exciting you about, where we're headed?
Definitely. I think we're going to see many, many cool things in the upcoming few years. Again, because of technology is really developed, and we see the hybrid of offline and online, and I think it will generate many, many cool things. First, I think that personalization is going to be the winner, meaning those who will be able to personalize their event experience will lead the market. When I talk about personalization, I mean those who will be able first to invite you to the event, which will be the most relevant for you, obviously, and then to personalize the experience itself. From the minute you get the email invitation to the introductions that you're able to make or to offer your attendees using technology, to the agenda items that are being suggested to you, to the food, to the takeaways, and to listening to feedback actually on the spot and then designing the experience accordingly. In my mind, personalization is the future of the event industry, and those who will not jump on that wagon will be behind. And in addition to that, I also see more and more connectivity between the online and the offline worlds. I see that the reach of events will actually extend beyond those who are in the room. It does not mean that attendance rates will decrease, because the experience for those who are present will always be way more impactful, but more opportunities for both revenue and engagement will be created with VR and AR and a lot of video participation as well from audience, and just audience engagement and speaking opportunities. Those technologies will enable that, and I think we're going to see more hybrid experiences at events.
Yeah, that makes sense. Total sense to me. So the rise of this hyper personalization, which we're already seeing on the digital side, but I think events have been a little bit slow to catch up, or it's just a little bit harder to pull off hyper personalization and in person. So I'm excited for that. I go to a ton of conferences. I can't wait until they, exactly know who I'm there to talk to, what I want to see, and what I want to eat for lunch. That would be awesome. And then go ahead.
No, I'm saying stay tuned, because I think in the upcoming few years there will be a big change driven by event technology. But I think specifically at technology conference, you're going to see a big change in terms of personalization. That's my prediction.
Yeah, I can't come fast enough. I'm excited for that. And then the other piece also that is exciting, because I do go to a lot of these conferences, but sometimes you just can't be there. You want to be there, but you have meetings or on-site things that you have to do, but you don't want to miss a session, or you have maybe some clients there. So this blending of the digital and the actual in-person events, I think, is going to be extremely, extremely interesting as well. So that I can be there even if I'm not actually physically present. I think that will be pretty neat. Okay, so that's the future of events. I want to tie it back quickly because we talked about how important it is to be measuring the ROI of your events and the impact that they're having. Right, the more impact you can show within your organization, the more budget you're going to get to experiment and go on a bigger scale. So, how should marketers be measuring the success of the events? And I can tell you, I was at a marketing offsite this week, and we drilled into a lot of events, and it seemingly there's not one uniform way of measuring success. So I would love to hear your take on what that looks like and how you measure success of events.
Yeah. I think this is a great question because first, there are many type of events, right? There are internal events and external events and paid events and free events, but I think everything starts with the why. And I think my recommendation for every organization would be to really understand, okay, why are we really running that event?
Right.
What are we trying to accomplish? The success criteria should be around that, not about the event itself in a way. There are several KPIs that are supporting that big outcome, and that can be satisfaction, and then attendees NPS. It can be how many people attended. Did we get into a full house or not? What was the revenue from ticket sales or from sponsorships? But all of those are KPIs that I definitely recommend measuring. Mm-hmm. They are not really related to the bottom line definition of success. This is around the business outcome. Usually at external events, if you're talking about, I think the audience of Sales Hacker and probably the people who are listening, I assume that in most cases, events are there in order to drive pipeline or retention or impact the bottom line. Whether it's in the short term or in the long term. The long term meaning that there is a big brand play here that in the long term is expected to translate into business results as well. So I think the smartest event planners will tie their event KPIs to the business outcomes and will know to track the event success 30 days, 60 days, 90 days post the event date, and to be able to go to the VP of sales, to the VP of customer success, and to the CEO and demonstrate the value of an event. And then you see amazing things such as, I'll show you some of the things that we saw at some of our customers that 3 years ago, it was the brand manager or the Marcom team who would produce an event, and they would be the only team in the company who would actually work in promoting the event. Once you're able to demonstrate the value, you suddenly see customer success managers and account executives, and the entire company is now working towards driving more event attendance, because as the CMO, you're now able to prove that customers who are attending our user conference are more likely to renew than those who do not. Or you can prove to the VP of sales that prospects who will attend our event are more likely to become closed-won opportunities than those who are not. Then you see an amazing transition happening in the company, and the entire company is united around getting more face time with our prospects and with our customers, and you can just prove that with numbers. And it really helps to prove the power of in person. It makes the job of the CMO easier. And I think amazing things happen when that's the reality.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree. And I liked you had a point there earlier about, just knowing, defining your goals for each event. Each event isn't going to be a lead generator. You're not going to, maybe not even close business on every event. So you have to kind of bucket it on maybe like demand gen, maybe influence deals that are already in the pipe, and then maybe, even closing events where it's really late stage and you're inviting them to something. That's really good points there. So I have a question for you. We have a lot of SDRs that are part of the community, lots of account executives, and they would, typically love to get in front of, a C-suite executive like yourself. So let's say that you are at an event and you're engaged with by, an SDR or an AE, and there is a decent fit with whatever, the solution they're selling. My question is, how do you like to be engaged with after an event? What is a way that you could stand out? Because typically after events, we see, there's this big influx of people trying to like grab people's attention. So curious to hear what makes you maybe respond or get back in touch with someone that you met at an event.
I'll just share from my perspective. I think what happens at the event will really impact the follow-up strategy and the likelihood for me to engage post-event. Right. Getting back to talking about moment marketing, so how you made me feel in that moment when we interacted at an event, whether it was at the booth or over lunch, makes the whole difference. So if you were able to, first of all, to stand out and be very creative. I always like to talk about Seth Godin's purple cow principle. So if there were many different exhibitors and you really stood out, the follow-up will be much easier. Of course, that's why marketing, at the end of the day, it's not only about numbers. Obviously, there's a lot of creativity there. So the fact that in-person events have the power to be very impactful does not mean that that the need for creativity is not there. So you need to create a memorable experience, and then follow-up is not a grinding task that you need to follow up and harass someone in a 10 calls and an email cadence with many touch points. And if that's the case, your event strategy should be a little bit different. If you find yourself as a BDR, in my mind, needing to generate 15 touch points post an event and kind of like to remind me, hey, you passed by my booth and took a swag, and I'd love to engage in a conversation. So my tip would be to revisit the event strategy and try and create that captive moment in which we can actually speak. And then how do you create those meetings? It's all about the value proposition, obviously, and then being a purple cow, stand out and offer something of value, whether it's content or a meeting or a relationship or a solution to a problem that you think we have.
Awesome. Yeah, tons of great points there, and for sure, like the purple cow, the Seth Godin, the standing out is so crucial, and you almost have to, in that when you're doing your outreach, is bring them back to that moment, that memorable moment that you had. So you need to have some way of bridging that kind of gap. All right. So as we kind of wrap up here, if anyone has any further questions from the community, please jump on and let us know. But I wanted to ask, just for those people that maybe don't know, how does Bizzabo, help marketers and sales professionals today?
So Bizzabo is an event success platform, and we help brands really manage all of their event needs, from creating an event website to manage all of the registration and ticket sales, event promotions. So we have a suite of tools that really helps to simplify, maximize, and streamline the attendee journey. And then obviously to measure the event outcomes. That's why I like to talk about these topics. So it's an all-in-one event management software. And the reason that we call it an event success one is because of our focus on the business outcomes of the event, by helping those marketers convert more and create more memorable moments, using some of our tools, from the event app to the networking community to just creating wow event websites and and so on.
Awesome. So yeah, if you're a marketer and you're in charge of events, make sure you check out Bizzabo. And we do have a question here from Tim, and it sounds like Tim is an AE, and he wants to know, as an account executive and you're a CMO, but how do you prepare your account executives for events? So he wants to know, what should he be doing leading up to an event to set himself up for success?
Cool. So when we send our AEs to an event, we start by doing homework on who is attending, what are some of the tools that are being offered to start engaging with the audience. And the reason we're doing research is to be able to personalize our reach out and to understand what kind of value are we able to offer to the people who are attending. We try to, we also believe that, again, it won't be beneficial to anyone if we're reaching out to the wrong people. So that's another reason of us pre-qualifying to maximize result, but also pre-qualifying in order to engage in meaningful conversations for both sides, not only for us. So we're trying to understand who are the people that we can actually be valuable for. So as an AE, I definitely recommend to not blast too much, but tailor your messages to the relevant audience and try to leverage technology as much as possible, because these days this is what can make an impact on whether you're efficient or not. And once you're interacting with someone, try to create a memorable experience so your follow-up post-event is actually easier.
Yeah, that's great advice. Definitely, you got to do your homework. And one thing that I actually used to use when I was, doing booth duty as a young sales professional was I would actually, when I was talking to someone and having a really strong conversation with them and having one of these, moments that you're talking about, I would actually say, as we were wrapping up, be like, okay, I'm going to send you an email, but in the subject line, it's going to say blue monkey or some obscure word. And then they'd be like, okay, that's interesting. And I'd be like, yeah, it's just because I know you're going to get hundreds of emails, but when you see that, blue monkey, it's going to, take you back to this conversation we're having. And then it's usually good for a little bit of a laugh. And I've had, about a 95% success rate with that, just because it's a fun, unique way to, start a conversation. So I would urge you to find your own kind of blue monkey, call it whatever you want, green pineapple or anything, and it can work quite well to bring people back to that moment. All right, we have one more question here, Alon. All right, so I can't see the name. I think it's Caroline. Caroline, so what do you believe about the event industry that not a lot of others believe?
I think you're on mute for a second there, Scott.
Sorry. So Caroline wants to know, what do you believe, Alon, about the event industry that not a lot of other people believe?
Interesting question. I probably heard that in the last 45 minutes, but I believe that the event industry, first of all, is ripe for innovation and disruption, because I think events and engagement and event success and those in-person moments can be measured these days. And there are still many people in my mind who think that events are this form of very abstract marketing activity that cannot be measured. So I'm a huge believer that everything can be measured, including events. Obviously, a lot of technology is needed in order to do that, but these times have come, and this is only the beginning. And I think many people also, a couple of years ago, I'm sure many of you remember Second World or Second Life, and people thought that events are going to disappear because we're all going to use our avatars and we're going to meet each other that way. But events are not going anywhere. Although some people will think that it's not a scalable marketing methodology, I think that offline is back in a way, and events are here for stay. And we're going to see, although we live in the swipe generation and relationships are very, very flat, becoming very flat, that's only a stronger reason for the leading marketers of the world to double down on events and actually run more of those to create those memorable and impactful moments.
Great answer. And I think that's a perfect place to wrap up, is creating those, moments. Humans are always going to want that, one-to-one, real live interaction. And I'm excited definitely after this conversation, even more excited to, attend and see the events of the future. So Alon, thank you so much for all your insight today. I had a lot of fun chatting with you. And for everyone who joined us on the community, thanks so much for the great engagement. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.